Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. As we move through today's program, we invite you to submit any questions that you have. The Q&A tab is located on the right side in the engagement dashboard. Type your question into the box, hit the purple button, submit button, and when you're ready, we'll go through our questions live at the end. We encourage you to engage during our presentation. Any commentary, insights, just drop it in the chat. Additional documentation is also available, and you'll find all of these features in the engagement dashboard. Now, to officially welcome you to today's Software AG Government webinar titled Mining Gold in Your Modernization Journey, Unlocking the Power of Process with Cutting-Edge Process Mining Technology. Today's program will be presented by Saraf Askadam, former Veterans Affairs Chief Modernization Officer, and Software AG's Nelson De La Cruz, Senior Solutions Architect. I'd now like to pass it off to Saraf.
Thank you, Danielle, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar on process mining to lead modernization at large agency. I'm the former Chief Modernization Officer at VA, and I'm super excited to share with you my modernization journey and how process mining can improve our services for veterans, along with helping other large agencies undergoing modernization. Let me start with the essential elements of modernization. The concept of modernization in an organizational context typically encompasses three elements: people, process, and technology. Each element plays a vital role in ensuring the successful transformation and modernization of an agency or organization. People. This element focuses on the human aspect of modernization. We have a huge and dedicated workforce of nearly 400,000 employees across VA. That's 400,000 employees. Just to give you a perspective, VA is the size of a Fortune 10 company. Our people are our most valuable asset, and we want to empower them with the right tools, training, and culture to deliver high quality care and benefits. VA's modernization is about more than systems. It's about changing how we do business, which requires culture change. We understand that culture change takes time, deliberate focus. User adoption is the most important element of any IT modernization. This includes development of staff to adapt new ways of working, fostering a culture that embraces change, and ensuring that the workforce is skilled and prepared for the new tools and processes. Process. We have a lot of complex and diverse processes that span across different functions, systems, and more than 130 medical centers. Some of these processes are outdated, inefficient, or inconsistent, which could lead to delays, errors, or dissatisfaction for our customers. This involves reevaluating and redesigning business processes to improve efficiency, quality, output, and customer satisfaction. It's about streamlining operations, reducing waste, and making procedures more responsive to the needs of the business and its customers. Processes must be continuously revised and updated to keep pace with changes in policies and procedures and the organization itself. Technology. We have a lot of legacy systems that are costly to maintain, difficult to integrate, and hard to adapt to changing needs. Modernization here involves the adoption of new technologies to improve business operations. This could include upgrading legacy systems to more modern platforms, adopting cloud computing, implementing AI and machine learning technologies, and leveraging data analytics for better decision making. All of these modernization initiatives are guided by our buy first approach, which means that we seek to solve problems and modernize outdated legacy systems by moving towards commercial off the shelf, also known as COTS, products instead of custom builds. We'll talk more about this later, but one of the tools we use to improve our processes is process mining, which is a data driven technique that analyzes the digital traces of our activities and identifies patterns, bottlenecks, and opportunities for improvement. Process mining helps us to understand how our processes actually work in practice, not just how they are supposed to work in theory. It also helps us to measure the performance of our processes and compare them with benchmarks and best practices. By using process mining, we can gain insights into how we can optimize our processes and make them more efficient, consistent, and customer centric. So that's the big picture of what modernization means for VA, as well as any other large agency undergoing modernization. Effective modernization requires a balanced approach that integrates all three elements. Technology alone cannot drive change without the right people to operate and embrace it. And the most skilled workforce cannot compensate for outdated processes. In the next few minutes, I'll talk more about the challenges to modernization process. Also, why process transparency is critical to agency modernization, and end with how agencies can benefit from using process mining to transform their organization and modernize their operations to provide better services. What are the challenges to modernizing processes? I want to share with you some of the insights and lessons we have learned from our efforts to modernize our systems and processes. Modernizing processes in a governmental or organizational context involves updating and improving existing procedures to be more efficient, effective, and aligned with current technological capabilities. This benefit activity has its own challenges. One of the main challenges we face is dealing with legacy systems. Many organizations, including the VA, rely on outdated systems and processes that are deeply embedded into their operations. Transitioning from these can be complex, costly, and time consuming. Legacy systems often involve dependencies that are not immediately apparent, leading to unforeseen challenges during modernization. One of the most important projects we are undertaking at VA is electronic health record modernization to replace our outdated and fragmented health record systems with a single, integrated, and interoperable platform that will enable seamless care coordination across the VA, the Department of Defense, DoD, and community providers. Another key initiative is the supply chain modernization, which aims to streamline and optimize our procurement and logistics processes. There's also a multi-year effort to modernize our financial infrastructure and align it with federal standards and best practices. All of these systems that I've mentioned are decades old and have limitations in terms of functionality, interoperability, security, and scalability. Replace them with modern, commercial, off-the-shelf products requires careful planning, coordination, testing, and training. Another challenge we face is the complexity of existing processes. In some organizations, processes have evolved organically over time and become complex and deeply embedded. Untangling and simplifying these processes can be a significant undertaking. For example, at VA, we have many processes that involve multiple steps, stakeholders, forms, and approvals. These processes can create bottlenecks, delays, errors, and especially frustrations for our employees and veterans. Simplifying these processes requires a thorough analysis of the current state, identification of pain points, and coordinations for opportunities for improvement, redesign of the future state, and implementation of the changes. A third challenge we face is regulatory and compliance issues. In regulated government agencies and industries, any change in process must comply with legal and regulatory standards, which can add layers of complexity to modernization efforts. At VA, like many other agencies, we have to comply with various laws and regulations that govern how we deliver services, such as the Federal Information Security Management Act, also known as FISMA, and the Paperwork Reduction Act, just to name a few examples. These laws and regulations set requirements for how we collect, store, process, share, and report data on veterans and their benefits. Modernizing our processes must ensure that we meet these requirements while also improving our efficiency and effectiveness. So, why is process transparency critical to agency modernization? As a former Chief Modernization Officer at the Veterans Affairs, I want to share with you some insights and best practices on how we can improve our processes and deliver better outcomes. As you'll see on this slide, process transparency is vital for several key reasons. First, it enhances agility. By facilitating change management and transparency in the modernization process, we can help our employees adapt to new situations and embrace new ways of working. We could also communicate clearly with our stakeholders and customers about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Second, it boosts efficiency and productivity. By having well-defined processes, we can streamline our tasks and reduce the time and effort required to complete them. We can also eliminate waste, duplication, errors, and focus on delivering value. Third, it reduces risk. By following processes, we can identify and mitigate potential risks that may arise in our operations. We can also ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements, avoiding fines, penalties, or even reputational damage. As you can see, effective processes are essential for the smooth and efficient operation of our organization. This will help us achieve our mission of serving our veterans with excellence and compassion. So, what is process mining? Many agencies can benefit from using process mining to transform their organization and deliver better services. Process mining is a powerful technique that combines data science and artificial intelligence with business process management. It allows us to analyze the data generated by our systems and processes and discover how they actually work in practice. By doing so, we can identify bottlenecks, inefficiencies, and risks, and then design improvements based on facts and evidence, and not just on a hunch. At the VA, process mining can be applied to several areas. such as claims processing, healthcare delivery, and customer service. It's a good way to gain insights into how processes are performed, where the gaps are, and what actions we could take to optimize them. Process mining can be a game changer for many agencies, and we're excited to share our thoughts and best practices with you. Process mining technology is like a gold miner's compass in the business landscape, uncovering hidden nuggets of efficiency and illuminating the intricate pathways of operational gold. In the next part of this webinar, Nelson de la Cruz will describe process mining tools and methods along with the benefits that can be achieved. Nelson will show you some examples of how they have implemented process transparency in modernization initiatives and what benefits they've seen agencies gain from it. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this webinar. Nelson?
Thank you, Saraf, for that introduction and for establishing a baseline on process mining and the challenges that agencies face in their modernization journey. So how do we find the gold with process mining? Saraf laid out some good examples, but what if, what is an organization to do? What if they could somehow look into the mountain of data that is generated by the enterprise? What if there was a way to separate the gold from the rest of the material that is out there? And that essentially is what process mining does. Using process mining, it'll give us a map and understand where that gold lies and how we can find it. What essentially process mining will do is reverse model, reverse engineer from that data and generate those processes for you. Then, with additional data that is provided with that event log data that systems create, we'll understand how people are behaving, how they're performing, how perhaps we could improve their training. We could also see where technology is assisting the process or perhaps not assisting. Maybe we find an opportunity for automation. There's lots of information that could be derived from this event log data. If we can combine it with some additional sources of information, such as financial data, we may be able to understand how our spending is moving through that process, or cost savings, the efficiencies that Saraf discussed. What if we could also integrate other events of kinds of information, such as, say, something simple like weather, or something more complex like conflict that may affect our processes across the globe. So this essentially is how we're going to find the gold within the mountain of data of our enterprise. Now, this sounds great in theory, but what does this actually look like? Let's now take a look inside the product, Iris Process Mining, and see how organizations can take advantage of this technology. The first screenshot that you see here on the left-hand side is an example of a generated model from ingesting process event log data. You could see the different paths that are taken. It's not always the same path from beginning to end. We may take multiple paths from that beginning to end. Those are called variants. So what if through this analysis, we could understand where the bottlenecks may lie? And then we could understand the magnitude of those bottlenecks. We could even perhaps define or find a root cause as to what is causing that bottleneck. Now, I say that with a little bit of caution because correlation does not imply causation, but it does tell us where to look, somewhere that will help us find our gold. So what about the risks that Saraf described? We may have compliance issues. How does process mining help us with these compliance issues and reduce risk to the organization? What we can find is where the process conforms to what we have designed or does not conform to how the process has been designed. We will find that happy path or improved variant that says this is how we're complying with all of our regulations, whether they be FISMA or they be FAR, the acquisition regulations. We'll be able to reduce our compliance or improve our compliance and reduce the risk to the organization. And then having transparency into the process offers value on its own. How do we have, or how are we reporting on our KPIs? How are we supporting our service level agreements, our SLAs? By just generating those KPIs, having better process analytics, that will assist our organization through our modernization journey. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. First, I want to present the world's smallest process mining demo. So what we do is we start with what we'll call a case. And that's just a generic term for the kind of process that we may be ingesting or investigating. So in this case, we have a purchase order process and we have an order number. The order number is, say, the case ID, and then we'll have an activity name. That's a step within the process, this purchase order process. And we have a timestamp. In this case, it's a date. It can actually get down to the hour, minute, and second. And then we have the second step in this purchase order process, has the same case ID, but it has a different activity step and a different timestamp. And then we'll go on to the next step and the next step after that, and that ends that first purchase order. Now we have our second purchase order, and that will have a different case ID. And in some cases, it'll have the same activities or different activities, and we'll have different timestamps as well. Now, what happens if we ingest this event log data? We will then have the smallest process mining demo, and the result is at the bottom. So we always start our purchase order process with step A, and then we either execute step B or C, and then we always come back together for steps D and E, and that ends that particular mined process. So let's now see this within the product. So here we now have a combination of items. In the gray elements in the background, that's the process as designed. That's how we would like everything to execute. And now when we look at this particular mind process, that's in the blue foreground, is overlaying the design process. So if I draw your attention here to that particular variant, variant number 4, as shown in the list on the right-hand side, and that particular step in the bottom left-hand corner, we see that that blue step, what was mined, was actually executed. So variant 4 is conforming to the process as designed. Now, in other cases, we may find that the process is executing not as it was designed. So in this case, variant number 1, which in fact is the most popular, skips that particular step. So we have, the result is we have a non-conforming process. And this obviously can represent a problem. Is that particular step important for security reasons or other compliance regulations? Those are the things that we have to worry about. So conformance is sort of a double-edged sword. There's a good side of it and a bad side of it. So on the good side of it is that it's telling us, are we performing as we're supposed to? Are we following the regulations? However, conformance is a binary option. You either conform or you don't conform. You either color inside the lines or you don't color inside the lines. So from a good side, it's saying, yes, we need to make sure that we follow all of the steps. That makes sure that we serve the customer best. Everything is executed as it's supposed to. We are following all the regulations, etc. However, what happens if we don't conform? How far did we actually color outside the lines? Was it just a little bit or was it really a lot? So we also have a different metric that we call fitness. Fitness tells us how far outside the lines we're actually coloring. And so in this case, even though our conformance in the prior screen only was 40%, turns out that our fitness is actually pretty good. It's 97. So this is 97 out of 100. So what are the differences here? If I draw your attention to the green oval at the bottom, that's showing the fitness of the variants near the left-hand side. They conform exactly. The fitness is 100%. So that's excellent. And then the next set, the next row down, that green oval, actually the fitness is fairly high. It's 96%. So the combination there, we're actually at 97%. So maybe we didn't conform that often, but we didn't color outside the lines very much. So you just have to understand what's the difference between that fitness and the conformance and what the impact will be on the organization. Is this a serious compliance issue, or was just this a slightly different way of executing the process from what was designed? So let's now look a little bit further. Here we have an analytics dashboard or process analytics from the ingested process. And this was a patient intake process. So you could see in the circle here in that donut chart, we had different diagnoses. And then I'll also draw your attention to the bottom panel, the bottom tile that shows that bell curve, where we have a nice normal distribution of the patient discharge process. And so this is great, but how can I improve? How can I improve on the particular execution of this particular process? What if I look at not at the bell curve, but I look at all of the occurrences that existed to the right hand side, what we call the long tail. So those are the items that go outside, say, the typical number of standard deviations of the performance of our process. And then when we look at those, what was the net result? Well, it wouldn't be a surprise to say that yes, people who stayed a long time in the hospital, it was due to COVID. But what if we wanted to take a closer look to say, is there anything else that we can glean from this kind of information? So what I can then do is draw your attention to the top. Once I have selected that those process instances on the long tail, that actually results in a filter. And then when I look at the different tabs in my process mining platform, I'll keep that particular filter as I do my analysis. So if I go to this other panel and say, all right, here's my filtered result. This is the performance of my process for that subset of data. And so we could see here the different paths that I take, but then you'll also see the colors or the thickness of the information that's showing on the screen here as we've zoomed in. You see the deep color reds? That's telling us where we have a particular delay, where we are documenting and getting prescriptions, or we are documenting information. In those cases, we're actually taking several days to perform those particular steps. That there is at least gold that we're not taking advantage of. We want to find the gold there. We want to improve the efficiency there. And that's getting back to what Sarafa described before. Do we have the right technology to execute those particular activities? Do we have the people trained in those particular activities? So this is telling us where to look. This is the root cause potentially of our problems, of our inefficiency. We don't necessarily know why, however, but it does tell us where to investigate further. So what else can we glean from process mining besides the performance? So what if we wanted to look at not just a backwards looking, we wanted to look at items that are going on right now. Process mining, as I was showing previously, looks at activities in the past. So as everything is in the past, that tell us how things has performed previously. What we can also do with process mining is look at how things are operating now. And if we find a particular problem, can we react in time to take corrective action? This is where we can use the process mining platform to go from insight to action. So we define the insight based on what we have seen before, perhaps say a particular delay in documenting and getting the prescription information for our patients. And if the delay exceeds a certain amount of time, we can then take action. We can escalate, maybe we can automate it, an alert, or notify somebody so we can correct this particular problem. So where do we go from here? I wanted to at least show you a report from Forrester, where they created a Forrester wave on process intelligence. Now, I'll note the circle, the software AG object or company within the wave is at the very top in their wave. Now, why did Forrester call it process intelligence as opposed to process mining? So typically process mining, as I mentioned before, that backward looking view, and perhaps maybe even a current view or current activity. But process intelligence goes further. The whole purpose, as Sharaf was talking about before, was about improving efficiency. In order to get there, we're going to have to change our processes and perhaps train our staff. And so what we want to do is not only use something, technology like process mining, but also use technology like simulation, where simulation will allow us to design a forward-looking process, a to-be process. And we could understand the resources that we have today, or new resources that we're going to be trained, or technology that will be brought to bear to improve the behavior of our process. So not only do we want to have process mining technology, but other technologies like simulation. Those together give us the process intelligence that we're looking for. If you're looking for more information, I encourage you to reach out to us. We've provided our contact information below. As a first contact, I strongly recommend that you reach out to Aaron Mazzatenta, Vice President, Software AG Government Solutions, and his email is below. Thank you very much for attending.
Awesome job with today's presentation. I loved the slides. Thank you so much, Nelson and Saraf. Great insights were shared. I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. I would now love to move over to our Q&A portion of the event. And so as I'm looking over here, I do see our first question. Looks like, how was the solution delivered? And Nelson, I think I'd like to go ahead and pass this over to you.
Sure. What is an agency to do? So this solution is delivered via SaaS. It is a software as a service, and we have it hosted in a FedRAMP authorized environment. So for federal agencies, you can feel safe that it is supported by a FedRAMP authorized environment, and that goes not only for our ARIS process mining, which was the focus of today, but also ARIS Enterprise, which is the process modeling part of our platform. So both are supported in FedRAMP, and that's how it's delivered.
Awesome. Perfect. And just looking at our next question here, I'm going to go ahead and share this one as well. How do you get started? Saraf, do you want to start with this one?
I think, thank you, Daniel, for that question.
Absolutely.
Any agency that's on a modernization journey, I think this is a great opportunity. I think as you're going from the today's state to the current state to the future state, part of it is understanding where your decisions are, where your risks are, and you want to be able to ensure that you get to a better state. So part of it is, as long as you have use cases and you have data, this is a great opportunity to leverage this platform. Nelson, do you want to add some more?
Yeah, I would really latch on to that last part with regards to the data. That's essentially what process mining uses as its raw material, right, for mining. That's where it's going to find its gold. It requires data. Without data, we don't have anything to mine, and so we can't get anywhere with the process mining technology. So if you have systems that generate event log data, that's going to be the raw material for us to find our gold.
And ultimately, the goal is to have that enterprise integration. That allows you to remove that fragmentation or overlap, and also in terms of execution, and also in terms of improving that service delivery. Those are all the goals that you want to be able to achieve with this.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for those answers. I think those were very thorough. So if you guys have any more questions that we didn't have a chance to get to, please continue to drop them in the Q&A. We'll get your information after the event, and we'll make sure to reach out to you personally to get any questions that you have answered. With that being said, thank you so much for joining us. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.